Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Wealth Equation podcast. Today, we have a gentleman joining us called Dan Welling. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Dan's story is very interesting. For those of you that have watched the program or the series will know that I have a bit of a cheeky interest in motor racing. So we've just spent the last 20 minutes, Dan and I, talking about motor racing. Nothing at all about business, but never mind. We'll come back to business in a minute. So Dan's story is going back in time to the mid-90s when he enters the IT industry, builds a business, sells it in 2014, 2015 onwards, getting involved in the emerging MSP movement, if that's the correct phrase. Dan's going to tell us all about this as we go forwards. So we've got a really interesting story of building a business, selling a business, moving with the technological evolution that's happening around us. Really outstanding stuff that we're going to learn today from Dan. So Dan, without further ado, tell us all about MSP Finance Team and the subsidiary aspects of that as well. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, again, thanks for having me. Always appreciate an opportunity to talk to a fellow motorsport enthusiast and wannabe racing driver. So really good chatting to you beforehand as well.
You're welcome. Hey, listen, before you get going, how do you ready for this? How do you make a small fortune?
I know where you're going. You start with a large one,
and you go motor racing. That's how you make a small fortune. Anyway, that's a terrible joke. Forgive me. Carry on. Tell us about your business.
There are some other really interesting, funny quotes as well. So yes. Well, where to begin? So I guess it's 1995, my first role in IT. By trade, I consider myself a salesperson, and that was my first job in a sales environment, on the desk, making calls, selling hardware and software products.
Excellent.
And that was where I cut my teeth, learned about the industry, and I feel particularly privileged and appreciative of that start. To be very honest, entirely by accident, I went to a recruitment agency and said, "What jobs could I consider?" And I guess for completeness, the work I'd been doing beforehand was I was a gardener, and I got work by going around houses that looked like they didn't have particularly tidy gardens, or that they did have particularly tidy gardens, and I would inquire as to how they kept their garden in such good condition. And of course, I didn't know it at the time, but that was the foundation of selling and putting that activity in. So I feel particularly appreciative of that foundation as well. So yeah, I ended up in the IT space. Second role in, I got my found my rhythm. Stayed with a company for 5 years. That company sold a mix of hardware, software, solutions, services, and was very much in that phase of IT growth before the .com bubble burst, where we went from faxes to emails, and we embraced the internet, and really foundational stuff today. But incredibly fast paced and interesting market to be in. I was inspired sufficiently to start my own business, focused on selling IT services, and that business. Yeah.
Tell us about that, Dan. When did you have the entrepreneurial seizure? How did it come about?
An interesting choice of words, and it was. I guess from an early age, my family had been entrepreneurs in the past, and so I always felt like I was destined to be a business owner of some description.
Okay.
And saw an opportunity, and took it. And it was looking back, I was wholly unprepared. for it.
Classically, yeah.
Well undereducated, and the initial years, to be honest, it was one mistake after another, learning lessons really quickly. Sometimes not the first occasion, and but I really see that as again foundational. Money
Yeah,
can't buy
there you go.
training and lived
Yeah,
experience. So yeah, that was the start of it for me, and we lived through a pretty interesting again period of time, where the iPhone became the device of choice
of course.
for getting your email on the move, and I, like probably many other business people of my age, look back and remember the frustration of not being able to check my email when I was on holiday, which I shouldn't have been doing anyway, because I should have been on holiday. But we live in an imperfect world,
Well,
and
you're also a business owner at that stage. So, well, you, you said something very well, lots of very interesting things, to be clear. But let's just ring fence one for a moment. What is it that made you successful then? How did you go from '02 to 2014 and sell the business? Because that's a 12-year span. The attrition rate of startups is horrendous, as no doubt you'll be aware. So you bucked the trend massively, Dan. So without going too deep into that space, what would you say was the answer? Why did you win?
really good question. To distill it down to one thing would be really difficult. I'll have a go though,
Go for
and
it. Yeah.
and actually, I think it's being a salesperson.
Now,
Um,
I wondered if that might be the thread that you would follow. Yeah.
and by no means the only
Mm.
reason. And
No, of course.
during that period of time, like most business owners, you take your fair share of gambles. You take a
Mhm,
lot of pain.
mhm.
If I were to look back on that 12 years, I almost certainly could have become far wealthier, working for someone else, and being
Well,
paid a salary and commission, of course, as a salesperson.
of course.
And I probably would have been far better off not running the business, but I would have arrived at this point in my life with perhaps some significant regrets of
Million
not
percent.
having
Million percent.
got stuck in.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're in business, you're in sales, as the cliche says, and I think it's absolutely true. You've got to be able to sell. If you can't sell, you can't deliver.
The amount of times that through the coaching, relationship with business owners that we have, um, people don't want to acknowledge the fact that if we're in business, we're in sales. And secondly, they focus on operational delivery, or they paint the office, or they, I don't know what, blame the team instead of going out and selling their way out of a challenging space, right? So fair play. Well, that's a great answer. I'm hoping that everybody watching and listening has really made a mental or physical note of that. Never ever stop selling. Great message, Dan. All right, man. So you would please carry on telling us about your journey. Forgive me for interrupting you there. Keep going.
Well, I guess the next phase really is then, you've started a business, you've sold it. What do you then do? And again, there's probably some interesting side discussions we could have in terms of the why did you sell, and what were the motivations.
How did the sale evolve? Was it a supplier? Was it a competitor? Was it somebody outside the sector? Team? How did it come about?
So the motivation for my business partner and I to look at exit was, again, another common cliche, which is shareholders fatigue. And we both felt that we learnt as much as we were going to learn on our own. And a couple of years earlier, we'd sought outside assistance. So we got a coach, a mentor. and from industry that had not an identical business, but had gone through the process in technology and services sales, and that was really good for two things. First of all, it showed us where we were perhaps weak and we weren't sufficiently disciplined. But it also gave us confidence in terms of the things that we were doing right that we didn't realize we were doing right. And you can often throw the baby out with the bathwater, and so knowing what you should keep and what you should change was critical for us.
Yeah.
And actually our sale ended up being via that individual. They also had a connection with another comparable business, so it was a trade sale, so you could argue a competitor, although they're in a different geographic market, and so it was a strategic purchase for them. They were able to access our market in the south of England, and actually the initial intent was that I would go off, and I was young enough to start a second career, so I thought I'd go and do something in motorsport, which, as we've already talked about, is a shared interest. Absolutely. And but I was very fortunate that about a year after the sale, I had the opportunity to buy into the acquirer business, and that was really, again, foundational for me. Total luck that opportunity opened up. And in that role, I got to experience a business double the size. So I jumped over a number of years of organic growth.
Okay, fascinating.
I had a great role that enabled me to go out and to engage with the community via our vendor and supplier partners, and that introduced me to the MSP community, which I had no idea existed whilst I was in business the first time round.
But again, we have to pause there for a second, don't we? Because the premise of luck or the concept of stumbling across a marketplace, right? It's fascinating, isn't it? Because how many people that are watching this podcast, listening to it, are going to say something like, "Yeah, but we operate in this train track." Kind of narrative parallel scenario where they're successful and they're strong, whatever that means within that narrative. But how many opportunities are they missing? The reality is that Dan wasn't lucky. He created those opportunities by looking beyond the standard paradigm that he'd been operating with up until that point. There's no doubt about that. You're looking beyond the norm. And that's a great message for people, isn't it? Get out there and talk to people. Hire a coach, get a non-exec. Or if you don't want to do those things, go talk to them anyway, because you're going to meet people and learn from them and broaden your perspectives. Brilliant stuff. Good. So you're into the world of MSP now, and you're starting to go through the gears again. But you're building something again yourself, right? Now you've left the other company, I'm assuming, or not?
Yeah, so a small phase in between those 2 points was that I in going out to engage in the community, I met lots of fellow MSP owners. I really enjoyed just talking to them, understanding their pain and their opportunity, and I offered my opinion, mostly unsolicited, and
two people listened.
some people were appreciative, and then one or two others then said, "You know what? I'd actually pay you for this." And I'm like, "Oh, really? That's interesting." And so, again, by accident or make your own luck.
We're not doing accidents. We're not doing luck or accidents.
Ended up becoming a coach, mentor, whatever term is appropriate, but really an interested party, caring for how those owners can develop their business and achieve their ambitions. And in a lot of cases, it's actually figuring out what their ambitions actually are before setting out on the journey. and so that then led to building an estate of MSPs that I was involved with, and in fact still am today in a number of cases. But what it flagged was that my assumed understanding of that everybody was across the financial elements of their business clearly wasn't the case,
No.
and of course I only learnt it as I progressed myself. So
Yeah.
and that's what led me to with another former MSP owner. Found the MSP finance team, which is the current sort of the day job.
Yeah.
And there we provide everything from compliance accounting through to management accounts, which is the core of what we do and advocate, and include some mentoring as well with Adam, my business partner, and I. So yeah, really.
Is this a new business partner, or is it the same original?
No, this is a new business partner. Again, someone I met through networking in the community.
Well,
building relationships.
Networking, right? Networking. So I'm going to ask you a question in a minute for the sake of everybody watching and listening. Explain to us the MSP world. Break it down so people understand exactly what you're talking about. Because there'll be people watching this that are running a hairdresser's, a salon, a cafe, a restaurant, a joinery manufacturing business. They're still business owners. They're challenged by all the things that you're talking about. But of course, in their sector, the phrase MSP may be a conundrum to them. Let's put it like that. So, but before I do, it's interesting observation, Dan. You don't hesitate to refer to yourself as a world-class salesperson, but there's a bit of a hesitation around your current label as to whether you're a coach or a mentor or whatever the circumstances prevail, require, sort of, not sure. That's an interesting one. What's going on there?
It is. And do you know, we've Adam and I have asked the question of multiple people, environments, to actually try and establish what exactly is the word that we define ourselves with, because some people use the word coach, some people use the word mentor. It can create a polarizing reaction. Either people are very anti it, or they're very pro it, and so yeah, for us, we are still seeking what is the right term. I joked early on that I called the service renter boss, because that's how I described my mentor coach originally. And it was, you know what, I'm not accountable to anybody. Sure. And I need that because I'm not fully disciplined, and so yeah, I joked it as renter boss, but when I suggested that to a few people, they said that's probably not a particularly good description.
I don't understand why people worry about being Marmite. Be Marmite. Don't worry about the ones that don't get you. Focus on the ones that do. Tell us about MSP then. What does that sector entail?
So MSP, the phrase, I was actually introduced to it by my acquirer in 2014, and it predates that a few years, but not many. Anyone not in the IT services industry would consider an MSP an IT support business, or an IT support company, that type of term, and it's almost always a business that provides IT services and products, and in the form of a solution. So it might be that they're historically it would have been break fix. So my laptop doesn't work, please fix it. But today, in a much more complicated and evolved world, dominated by security, as the driver, as office productivity has tended to reach a plateau not allowing for the introduction of AI. But yeah, generally it's a business that provides a managed support service, and that's the term, MSP, managed service provider, for IT services. And the majority of businesses that consume that would be in the SME sector. So those that don't have their own internal IT department, although there are some exceptions to that.
Yeah, I mean, so everybody watching and listening on some level will have an MSP,
Almost certainly, they'll have an accountant, a lawyer, and it's another
software guy, the
professional
hardware guy.
service. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we also have in our own stable of businesses a software company, which is an MSP in its own right. So there you go. Yeah, interesting. So how do you create vision? How do you and Adam understand where you're going in your business? Like, for example, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, just talk us through the process that you guys employ.
It tends to be pretty bespoke, to be perfectly honest, based on the maturity of the owner. Not everyone's starting at the same place and looking to end at the same place as well.
I'm referring to your business, Dan. Forgive me, your own.
Oh, right. Okay. How do we do it within our business? Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So, well, both Adam and I are inspired by EOS, uh, 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 the entrepreneur's operating
Yeah.
system, for those listening that are unaware. And as I say, we're influenced by it because we don't consider ourselves well, we are not coaches in an official sense, but we really like the concepts that it employs. And for Adam and I, we are still in very much that sort of hustle stage. An initial, we're just coming into our fourth year effectively, so we are planning. Again, what our expectations from the business are for the next 3 years. And whenever you have a plan, it's like it's a 3-year plan, but we're just not going to commit to which year it starts or finishes in.
Are you writing these plans down? Are you? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for most young businesses that don't that are perhaps still working in rather than on the business,
Yeah.
as is true for most young businesses, we don't go back to review it as often as we should. Although we do create ourselves the space to do that in sort of quarterly sessions. We have a to-do list, as EOS suggests, and everything
Yeah.
goes on that, so we get it out of our head, and we hold each other to account in terms of what we're committing to on each of those individual tasks. And then EOS talks about having sort of larger rock priorities for each quarter. So we don't follow the rules of EOS fully, but we do use it to inspire us and go through that sort of cycle of discipline and organisation and planning.
But the reason that we're talking today is that you're an evolved business professional, and we're here to teach and to guide, aren't we? And that's the reality of why there's value in listening and watching this program. So what's fascinating to be able to share with the team there is that you guys are starting out from step one with I'm trying to avoid cliches, but I can't. I'm rubbish at it. So I'm hearing, there's a compass setting, there's a satellite navigation system, you've got EOS there as a guiding mechanism for, why do people, why it's interesting, this psychology, isn't it? Why do people not access knowledge and learning? It's so powerful. And it's brilliant to hear somebody, in fairness, most people that jump on the podcast are working with a non-exec or some type of coaching mechanism. In fairness, they are. None of them are me, by the way. We're completely arbitrary. We've got clients. We keep threatening to interview and get some clients on it from Powerplay. But to date, we haven't done it because it's lovely to speak to people that are not a part of our circle, you know, and see what they're up to and share some great learnings. So I love the fact that you've got the EOS system there jogging alongside you. I love the fact that you're business planning, because again, people don't do this, do they, in small business world? Why would we build a business plan? They never work. Right, let's not go down that path. Yeah. Tell us about, okay, not financial management, because
Mhm.
clearly that's a core competency and you guys are teaching that subject. So I don't want to go there. But what about marketing? Because you don't get to sell. Here's an interesting point to debate, Dan. You don't get to sell unless you have an effective marketing machine, right? Because the marketing machine creates the opportunity for the sale, or not.
Uh, I would almost fully agree with you, and the
Go for it.
where and there is this debate between sales and marketing. Godzilla and the T-Rex, you know, which one is right? And actually, as a mature professional, I fully accept that yeah, the sales and marketing need to work together. And uh, uh, and there is a phrase I've heard before, which is "everything is marketing," which again I would probably, yes, I can see what they're saying, but maybe I would debate that.
Well,
But yeah,
just to
yeah,
jump in, the
yeah,
phrase, and I can tell you that the gentleman's name that I was taught this by, a guy called Brad Sugars, who's the founder of Action Coach. Now, he would argue that anything and everything that touches a prospective or an existing customer is marketing. So I think that's probably what you
right.
got a snapshot of there.
Mhm. And
I mean, it's
yeah,
a challenge though, right? Because sales on that basis is a part of the marketing machine.
quite right. And salespeople can do marketing.
Yeah.
So I liken it to being you you can, like, you can as a brand, personally, or your organization's brand, you can get out there and hustle, and you can meet people, and you can make connections, and you can, you know, today we're so lucky to have LinkedIn as a prospecting tool. Before, it was the yellow pages, and who did you know that could tell you about XYZ, and getting company prospectuses on, you know, in from their reception. And you know, we're so lucky now that we can actively prospect, and there's so much information available to build our list. But in reality, the marketing function should be nurturing at the early stage. Yes, it may create us some leads, but until marketing is humming, and it's a mature system with a rhythm to it, salespeople will need to go back and do some marketing themselves. They'll need to generate their own leads for them to then work, and that's the symbiotic relationship.
Do you guys have a target client profile? Have you written down that's in a plan? You know where
Sorry,
they are, what
yes.
they look like, blah blah blah. Yeah.
Uh, yes, as far as we can at the hustle stage of our business. So we are solely focused on MSPs, managed service providers. So absolutely, we're a single niche business. And in truth, if we were having this conversation about an MSP, we'd probably be encouraging them to have more than one niche, but still to be niching, but more than one, because what happens if something affects your one niche? So But yeah, we're fully committed to one niche. We're learning with every one of the new clients we take on as MSP finance team. We're learning more and more about our niche and the profile of our ideal client. And we have a range of services. So actually, we've got multiple client personas within that niche that can apply to different services. But yes, we're absolutely laser focused on maintaining and refining our ideal customer, and then designing everything back from there.
So I'm aware that time this afternoon is slipping by for us here, Dan. I don't want to finish without asking one or two more real gritty questions. So,
Mhm.
how have you guys defined what makes you different? How can we help the people listening understand what you and Adam have done to define why people should listen to you
Yeah, really good question.
in a saturated marketplace? Yeah.
In a saturated marketplace, yeah. I mean, it really comes down to the same reason that an MSP would have to differentiate. It's them. It's the people. It's the founder of the business, until the business is such a scale that it has a brand of its own that stands aside from the owner. So for us, it is Adam and I. We've both gone through the process, the journey that our clients will or are going through.
They buy into you. They buy into
they're buying into us. They're buying us as people. Yeah.
Okay, that's fascinating. Really cool. And in terms of, let's think a little bit here about the value system, the culture that you guys are evolving. What kind of words spring to mind, adjectives that summarize what you stand for as a business?
Well, and again, this kind of intermingles with, what would we be talking to our clients about, and it's words such as value, balance, lifestyle, and those are values that we're designing our business to support, those answers for Adam and I,
Yeah.
and encouraging our clients to be doing exactly the same by thinking about how so value, for example, how do I add value to my clients? How do I create value for them in their business? How does that help me create value in my business? And where's the ultimate reward for us both?
And do my values match their values, right? Because if you're going to be a closely interwoven team, there has to be a value alignment, right? Interesting. You see, the reality is that if we were to walk down the high street, the pair of us today, and start asking that question of the majority of SMEs, there'd be very few, and no disrespect to the massively important business community that's out there, very few people have sat down and figured out what the value system is and what it means and how do we articulate what we stand for. It's great that, I mean, with respect, that was not a what's the word, a pre calculated or warned question, was it? You were not aware I was going to ask that question, but the answer was there straight away. That's a great situation. So Dan, thank you so much for joining in today. I feel like, if I'm being brutally honest, I feel like and I say this, I realize now there's a pattern evolving here. Everybody has to come back twice, because I always end up ending at this point thinking, well, we didn't talk about that, and we didn't go there, and we didn't do this. So because there's so much more to learn from an energized, humble, but clearly ambitious professional like you, Dan. So thank you for sharing with us today. And do come back again at some stage and join in again, please.
Looking forward to my invite to come back. We'll get it booked in, otherwise it won't happen.
Good answer. Great stuff. Thanks a lot, Dan. We'll see you again soon on the Wealth Equation podcast. Cheers.